Oh, look, we're live. Wrestling Bookmarks. Kenny Casanova. It's been a while since you've been here.
Hello. How are you?
So,
I tried to go with the ECW look tonight. Look at Sabu.
I like it.
And I got the brick background and $100 to anybody who can guess whose shirt I'm wearing right now, because it's not really a wrestling shirt, but it's a shirt one of the wrestlers wore.
We won't give $100 away to somebody.
Oh, $200? All right, $200 then.
I did have a question for you that I was going to ask you, but I figured we'd save it for here. Did they ever contact you to be on the Wrestling Treasures, Hidden Treasures show?
Why? Because all the stuff I have?
Is Hulk Hogan going to come to your house and try to get his shirt
if
back?
you wanted the white T-shirt, I've got one of the original, I guess, if you say that. I mean, so there was a particular Saturday Night Main Event show where he ripped off his shirt and he threw it out to the audience, brother, and a little kitty, Kenny Casanova, reached up and grabbed it out of the sky. And all these fans jumped on me, and I was fighting them off, and I'm fighting them off left and right and holding on to that shirt for all it's worth. And, yeah, I got the white Hulk Hogan American-made T-shirt in a frame downstairs in my basement now. So pretty cool.
Have you watched that show at all?
Yeah, it's on the network. So I think
it is?
Yeah. Oh, look at this. David is calling me on the other phone. We're waiting on. This is our guest.
We have a guest
He's calling right now. So should I check it? I will check it.
Yeah, I would probably check it.
Hello. Hello. What's up? Hello? I hear nothing. Hello? You hear that? Well, he's on his way, I think. I don't know what that is, but that's probably him saying he's having technical difficulties. We're waiting on the great Dave.
All right, we're used to it.
Ooh, he called right back again. Let's see what that is. Well,
if
hello?
He comes on.
Can you hear me? Hello? Do I look like Paul Heyman right now? Hello? I don't hear anything. He's calling me on the messenger, and it's not. I hear nothing.
Oh, he's calling you on the messenger.
Yeah, no, he's calling me that way.
Well, if
he's
he comes
trying to get
on, how do you pronounce his last name? David Winell?
Winell.
Okay. Well, he's got a book called Ring Man.
Call him again.
And it's a pretty good book. I tell you.
Oh, you know what? I think I can get him this way. Let's try this. Let's see what this does.
I just sent an email and said, "Hey, Dave, just literally click the link."
Dave, can you hear us?
Hello, Dave.
Hello, Dave. Anyhow, this is probably boring people. Back to that story. Yeah, dude, I watched it, and you can kind of see me in the corner just getting jumped. You don't really see me.
Oh, you're talking about oh, yeah. I was asking you, have you watched the actual show? The
Treasure Saturday Night Main Event in, I want to say 86. I think it's 86. I could look the date up. But basically, the match, it was Hulk Hogan Hulk Hogan and the Junkyard Dog,
right,
with the Haiti Kid versus the Funk Brothers.
That's right. The most random match ever.
I know. It was awesome. May 3rd, 1986, Saturday Night Main Event. Yeah, man, I caught that shirt, and here's the weird part, though. I'm kicking myself now. I had two ticket stubs, and I didn't have the internet. When I got older, I figured out, oh, this shirt came from one of these ticket stubs. And I guessed and I guessed. I'm like, it's got to be this one. It was a different ticket stub. And I didn't think any value of the ticket stubs because you can actually sell some of these things now for money. Some people collect them, but I threw away the actual ticket stub from that event and kept a different one.
I think he's on now.
He's on? All right.
Let's bring him on.
Let's see what happens.
Can you see me?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, good.
Here we go. David
well, good.
Little more weight, little less hair.
No, there you go. That's all right. I ain't seen you in a little while. I was telling him, I don't know. I probably did 50 or 100 shows with you. I don't know. A lot.
Yeah. And you were the most flamboyantly dressed manager of anyone I ever knew.
Oh, well, thank you. I like that. I appreciate that.
We're not on yet, are we?
Oh, we're on. Yeah.
No, we're
we
on.
are.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
But you can bury me in, any way you want. I don't mind.
No, I didn't. If you notice, I didn't bury anybody in the book.
No. Yeah. We were
friendly book. Fan-friendly.
Yeah. And Eddie, you want to talk about the book? Let's bring it up right away now. People
so
been
the
waiting.
book is called Ring Man, and Dave, I had a chance to. I probably read the first 100 pages or so far, and I'll tell you what, it was pretty good. It was really good. I didn't want to stop reading that. The only reason I stopped because of the show right now.
Thank you very much.
But a couple of questions that I had was, I don't know how much you want to give away out of the book, but why? Because it seems like you had a regular job. You were working at the World Trade Center.
Well, yes. In those days, of course, Vince could not use his own people to referee. He had to use state officials. Mm-hmm. So we were assigned by the state, and I worked basically in New York and did some traveling with the independents, but with the WWF, which was at the time, he would use people like myself who had outside jobs. Everyone basically had an outside job, as far as I know. And the wrestlers had outside jobs at that point in time. Lou Albano was driving a cab back in the 80s in Mount Vernon. Used to take my friend to Sunday school. A lot of the guys worked on the docks out at, I think it was the New York Daily News or the Post or one of those newspapers. Mm-hmm. And, and they would get away when they could to do the tour up the East Coast.
Wow. So you were working a 9-to-5 job and then you'd go referee.
Well, yes, as far as the WWE was concerned, yes. I had the type of job first at the Trade Center, and then I was an elected government official, a tax receiver. And I actually collected Arnold Skoll and Freddie Blassie's and Paul Heyman's parents' taxes. And that was actually more dangerous than refereeing, by the way. I could get away weekends, so I would go with Northeast Championship Wrestling with Tommy Jeanette, and we'd go on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday tour. We'd do fairs in the summertime, but I always had a legitimate job. I heard they were looking for full-time referees, and I once said to the chief, who was an agent at the time, I said, "What do you think, Chief?" And he goes, "You got a good job? Yeah. You got a pension? Yeah. You got benefits? Yeah. What are you, nuts?" He said, "Keep doing what you're doing." I said, "I love to referee." He said, "Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing fine. You're doing 40, 50 shows a year. You're all right."
Well, what year is this about?
83, 84, 85. I started in 82. And I stopped in 2015, just shy of 32 years. So just over 30.
Good run. Yeah.
And it was a lot different. It was kayfabe was in play, obviously. 99% of the people thought it was real. It was mostly blue-collar workers smoking, drinking, betting on the matches. White-collar closet fans that would never admit they would go to a show, tried to hide, hoping they didn't see anyone they knew. So it was much different than today, obviously.
That's great. Did you get a chance to do any of the pay-per-views at all?
The only pay-per-view I did was the Bunkhouse Brawl, and I had a very young new Sting and Jimmy Garvin against the Sheep Herders. But I did do the very famous cult following Heroes of Wrestling.
Oh yeah.
Yes. And I didn't realize it was such a cult following. I had tried to put it out of my mind. And then recently, not too long ago, I looked on the internet and people are talking about it all over the place. It kind of like.
Can I mention that they call it the worst pay-per-view of all time?
Yes, you can. I'm famous or infamous for that. Yes. And I would probably say that's quite true. I wouldn't argue with it. It was a little hair raising to go into the ring and not have a finish in front of a live TV audience. That was a bit of a scary thing. But
that was for Michael Bryan, right? NEW.
Well,
He
Mike
kinda
had
laid it
set
out for
up
those guys?
he set up the talent, and he was like the booker, and he had wanted to book some other guys, but they weren't available. And it was really run by Fosstone's production.
Hmm.
And Mike wasn't the one who was responsible for it in one
Right.
sense. He just provided the talent and hired myself and a few other people to referee. And I get a lot of heat from that because they say the referee counted to three and they weren't the legitimate guys in a ring. Well, if I hadn't counted to three, we might still be working now. You know, I mean, no one wanted to take the fall. And I said to Bundy, I said, gee, I was very friendly with Bundy, Mr. Bundy to you.
He's the man.
Mr. Bundy to you, Winell. I said, Kong, throw me out of the ring, will you? And I'll let the other referee come in and deal with this. I really don't want to deal with this. And he said, I'll take care of it. Well, he knocked Jake down and covered him, and I went 1, 2, 3. They weren't the legitimate men in the ring, but I just wanted to get the hell out of there.
Wow. You know, if Bundy had it his way, he should have been doing a 5 count, though, right?
Well, I probably should have, but at that point in time, between Jake and Neidhart and everyone, and Yokozuna, I'm just saying, let's get out of here. Let's end this now and put everybody out of their misery. So, but,
now, why do you think it didn't work?
I guess there were a number of things. Gordon Soley was supposed to be I don't want to talk about this too much, but Gordon Soley, it's painful. Gordon Soley was supposed to be the commentator with Dutch Mantell. Am I pronouncing his name right? Mantell, I guess.
Sure.
He was ill at the time, and they substituted someone who knew nothing about wrestling. Well, that didn't help because he wasn't calling the correct holds and things of that nature. So that didn't help. A lot of the guys were past their prime. You know, they were really past their prime, and it just didn't all come off too well. But you try to do the best you can in a ring with the guys and try to make it as meaningful as possible. I didn't work a lot of pay-per-views because I refer to myself as the Alpha Omega ref. I got the guys on the way in and on the way out. I never got a lot of the main events at the Garden. I mean, I was thrilled just to be there. I mean, I didn't care if I got the main event or not, but I would always get the new guys. But what was fun was I got new guys like The Undertaker. I got new guys like Bam Bam Bigelow when he appeared in front of 200 people at a church hall and was scared that he wasn't going to look good. It was like one of his first or second matches. I did Hunter Hearst Helmsley's first match in the Garden. I got a lot of the guys, Bret Hart, when he first came in with Jim Neidhart as the Hart Foundation. So I got a lot of guys when they first came in because some of the more established refs were getting some of the bigger matches. And then when the guys would leave the WWF, I worked with a lot of independents as I did with Kenny. And I get him on the way out. I got Yokozuna in one of his first matches when he was working for Papa Offit out in Allentown. I got one of his last matches at the pay-per-view. So I kind of like broke in. I won't say I broke in. I mean, I didn't break in the wrestlers. These guys were talented. I was there just to make them look good, help them look good. So I get to actually work with a lot of young talent when they first came in. Shawn Michaels when he first came in, people like that. So I'll always be very proud and happy of that I was able to work with these guys. Very early, 21-year-old Eddie Gilbert was my first match against Johnny Rods. Kurt Hennig when he first came in. So what a thrill to see these guys first come in and then work their way up to being headliners and leaving me behind with the new guys who were coming in, so to speak.
So did you continue to work your normal job, or did you end up leaving that?
No, I always had a job. I never was going to, because I mean, first of all, Vince didn't have, none of them really had medical benefits. I had medical benefits from my job. So I always told the guys at the show, if I ever get hurt, throw me in the street. I'll say a car hit me. You know, I don't want my insurance company from work to know that I was refereeing part-time. They might have had me get my own, because a lot of the independent promoters, they covered the people, but they didn't cover the ref or the wrestlers. So, that was one thing. And another thing was if you get hurt or you'd be gone, if Vince didn't like you or somebody didn't like you, and the independents were going to hire guys full time. So I always wanted to have a real job. Refereeing is obviously real, but I felt it was to my benefit to always keep a legit job outside and do this as an avocation, so to speak. So, I mean, I spent 23 years in the tax office. Retired with a pretty good pension. And I mean, if I had refereed, first of all, I would never refereed for that long. And secondly, I wouldn't have had a pension. So I felt that it was in my best interest to just keep doing what I was doing. And I was fortunate enough to get a lot of work.
So how would they pay you back then? Would it be per match or per night?
Well, you actually got paid according to the number. In your very early days, you got paid according to the number of people in the building. Mm-hmm. The wrestlers did also, and so did the referees. So if you were in a small gym, which was kind of ironic because I'd go to a small gym in the Bronx and be the only referee and work 8 matches and get paid $50 and work the guard and then get paid a heck of a lot more. I don't want to go into how much making, but a lot more. And I'll never forget, I did put this in the book, but I'd like to share it with the fans. I'll never forget the night Freddie Blassie and I hit it off very well. I mean, we just really got along. So I'm in a ring and Freddie comes in as the Ayatollah Blassie. And we're in a Catholic high school gym in the worst section of the Bronx. And first of all, he says, Jesus, Dave, we're in trouble. The people in the audience are tougher looking than the wrestlers. And I said, you're right, Freddie. And he sees a guy 300 pounds sitting in the balcony. Now, only Freddie would think of something like this. The guys, like I said, if you had 500 people, you got paid something. If you got 1,000 and so forth, it worked its way up to the 16,000 at the Garden. So Freddie looks up and sees this 300-pound guy sitting on 2 seats. And he says with a straight face, Dave, talk to Skolin after the match. Tell him to go up there. Make sure the guy bought 2 tickets because 1 ticket more would put us into the next phase. So, basically you were paid according to the number of people. And you worked a lot harder on the indie shows. You worked on the WWF, but the pay was better. But I didn't do it just for the pay. I mean, I wouldn't have done it for nothing. But I didn't do it just for the pay. I mean, the thrill, and Kenny will tell you, the thrill you get in a ring when you're part of something that's entertaining people, especially when kayfabe was in. You take a bump and people thought I was really hurt. And sometimes I was. I mean, I did get a number of injuries over the years, but you get a thrill. It's a rush, right, Ken? And
totally.
I mean, it made a dull life. I mean, being a tax receiver is not exactly one of the most. It's boring. Yeah, it's steady, but it's boring. And being able to go evenings and kind of like be someone else, like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Here's a smile man, an accountant in the office, and all of a sudden he's in a ring pointing his finger at the warlord and going, "You hold his trunks again, and I'm going to disqualify your ass."
So I just wanted to plug, if people are jumping on right now, Ringman is on. They can get it on Amazon.com right now, right?
Yes, it's on Amazon. I tried to make it affordable. It's $14.99 for the paperback, and it's $5.99 for the ebook. I'm not a name that's going to jump out at someone and they're going to say, "Wow, Dave Winell, I got to buy his book." But most of the people almost all people who bought the book and the other podcasts I've been on, they all seem to really enjoy it. I mean, I was on Wrestling Memories Then and Now, and Mike McCurdy said, "Dave, I had no idea who the heck you were." And I go, "But I read the book, and you had some great stories, and this is what I wanted to share with the fans. I wanted to share stories about the great classic era of the '80s. I'm probably looking too much. I feel like you guys, but I wanted to share with the fans the great times we had back in the '80s and '90s. A different era, different time."
So you talked about kayfabe for a second. Have you ever had a moment where stuff got real, somebody went into business for themselves, and you still had to do a finish because a promoter was asking for a particular finish? And what would you do if that happened?
Well, there was a couple times when things didn't go as planned. I remember very early working for Mark Tendler out in out in Long Island. And there was a very young kid who no one knew called Cactus Jack. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he was on the show. But these two girls, they were in a ring and they started getting pretty rough with each other. And then one of them started pulling the other's hair out, and the other one started kicking the other one. They started punching each other. And I go, wait a minute, this is not in the script here. What are we doing? We got no script. And they started punching me. One of them started hitting me and said, mind your own business. Yeah. So I kind of tossed one of them out of the ring, or kind of pushed her out of the ring. I figured that would take care of it. Then the other one jumps out on her and they start fighting outside the ring. Finally, Mark Tendler came out and we separated the two. There was no finish. We brought him back to the locker room, but the people really enjoyed the match. They thought it was great. And then the other time when it was supposed to be a finish was when Abdullah the Butcher was teaming up with Ted Arcidi against Toru Tanaka and Cousin Luke. And
Hillbilly Cousin Luke, right?
Hillbilly Cousin Luke.
I'm just guessing because I know the area he worked, and it sounds like his promotion or him booking for Tommy Fiera or.
Well, it was Johnny Rods who was booking for.
Okay.
Okay. It was the first time I worked for Tommy.
Yeah.
And it's the final. It's the main event. And first of all, we're in the smallest ring I've ever seen. It looks like those rings they sell online to put the toys in.
Oh yeah.
And here's Abby and Tanaka and Arcidi and Hillbilly Cousin Luke all in at the same time. Well, they're really going at it, and they're really throwing things. And Arcidi jumps out of the ring, he grabs a chair, and he clips Luke's ear with the wrong end of the chair. He clips it with the leg. And Luke's ear starts bleeding all over the place. Well, of course, Abby's eyes got as big as antelope. And he jumps out and gets the bell. Comes in and starts hitting the ear for real. And I run over and I says, hey, Mr. Butcher, what the hell are you doing? He said, it's just good for the business, brother. I said, this may be good for the business, but it ain't doing much good for Luke's head. Like, come on, will you? So it totally got out of control. Tanaka, who was now a face, he was supposed to go over with the pin on Arcidi. Well, there was so much chaos, I called for the bell. And I just said, it's a no contest. Both teams are disqualified. But that was not the finish. And
that's great.
That was another time. There were a few times when things got a little crazy. But and then another time was a kid got speared. Young kid, I think his name was a Rebel, got speared into the turnbuckle head first. And he missed and he hit the post and cut his head open. Turns around, he's about to pass out. And I said, lay down, get pinned. And he goes, oh, no, I'm supposed to win. I said, lay down and get pinned. His face is covered in blood. He says, no, my family's here. I pushed him down. I said, cover him. 1, 2, 3, get him out of here. Go get him.
That's funny.
Now, David, I've always been curious. How do you get the signal to go home when you're in the ring as the ref?
How do I get the signal when to go home? I don't know what they do now. They got ear things that they try. I guess they listen to the back for everything now. I've had guys, Bam Bam, some guys used to change the finish on me. Bam Bam Bigelow wrestled Doinks, and they were best friends. And they changed the finish on me in the ring. I remember one night Mick Foley wrestled Jerry Lawler, and they decided to do every finishing hold of every current popular wrestler. It was a 20-minute match, and the kicker was, I said, and who's going over? They go, you have to find out in the ring. We ain't telling you.
Nice.
So I go in the ring with all these, with like 20 false finishes. I have no idea what's going on. But normally for the Garden and other things like that, they would give you the time. They'd give you, the match is going to go 18 minutes, and we're going to so-and-so will be going over. And I just thank God that I never really screwed up a finish. I mean, some refs have screwed up finishes, I'm sure, as you know. But I just thank God I've never screwed up a finish on a match, because that's the last thing I would want to do. I'm sure they dropped me. But basically, the Garden really had to, and they used to, in the Garden, they used to put a pencil in their mouth. The time people put a pencil in their mouth, it was time to go.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense. Huh. And you have to be aware of that. Like you just have to look over and see it.
Well, I said in the book that I would give Tom. I mean, I'm saying I'm breaking kayfabe, but everyone and their grandmother has, I guess, since Vince said it's all.
The cat's out of the bag, right?
Well, it was real. It was real before Vince said that, though. I have to admit, it was real. Time was very important. They would give you one finger, 5 minutes, and I tell the wrestlers I said this in the book: 2 fingers, 10 minutes; 3 fingers, 15 minutes. And after that, I'd say, time to go home, boys. And of course, and I hope Johnny's not listening. Can I say this? We'd go on the fair shows, and we do 2 shows. And the fair guys would want them an hour apiece. We had 5 matches each show. Okay. You know, Johnny, he's got to tell a story. So Johnny gets in the ring and he's going on and on. And Tommy Jeanette's going. And I'm going. And I said, Johnny, we got to go home. He goes, oh, no, I didn't finish the story yet. And Tommy's going, get him on. And I'm going, you're getting me in trouble. Oh, no, we got to finish the story. So, Johnny would, but Johnny, as you know, was a wonderful worker and a wonderful guy. And without him, I would have never made it. And I love him dearly. But he loved to wrestle. He could have wrestled for 2.5 hours and not even broken a sweat. But everything was time-wise especially on the WWF shows. Now, if I could just mention something, I think now one of the things that I think with the independents a lot of times is their first matches go a little bit too long. And what happens is they do 200 finishes, and people are burnt out by the third match. I think in those days they mix things up a little bit more, and matches. The first match, a lot of times at the Garden, the first match would go Broadway. They do 20 minutes. But that's basically it. Things were timed out. They wanted to time the show back in those days, so it would get over a certain hour.
Mm-hmm. So, Dave, a lot of people hear about the New York State Athletic Commission. Could you explain what your role is with them and how they would actually book you for shows? Because these days, the way that indies work, as you know, the ref is probably brought in by the promoter, or right. The ref he sells tickets, or he's part of the ring crew. But you actually were more in the system. Could you explain how that worked? I don't think everybody understands that.
Well, you had to be licensed by the state to work in New York. Vince or the independents could not use their own refs. So I would get a call on a Tuesday and say, Dave, are you available Friday night? We need you up in the Bronx to do a show. You'll be the only ref on the show, so get there a little bit early. Or there's a WWF show going on at the Ridgewood Grove Arena. We'd like you to go out there. You'll be working with Dick Kroll. So they would call me and assign me, and if I couldn't make it, I would tell them I really can't make it. I never refused a show. And the independents out of state could start using any refs they wanted. And I started realizing that I'd like to travel a little bit. So Tommy Jannetty gave me a call through the courtesy of Rich Mancuso. Tommy Jannetty gave me a call and said, I'll give you a try. And then he liked me and he kept me the 10 years or 12 years he ran. I got in with new NEW with Michael Lombardi. And Michael used me as his referee right from the beginning. Because a lot of refs in New York could not do 7 or 8 straight matches. I was young at the time, so I could, but some of the older refs could not do that. And Mike had said, gee, if I request you on my shows from the commission, excuse me for 1 second, the old sinuses are acting up. So what happened is guys started requesting me, and then I started working out of state with Mike in New Jersey. I got licensed in Jersey, and New York still stayed with we provide the officials and you'll use our officials until 2000. New Jersey loosened up and said, if Mike wanted to use me, I could work in Jersey. Connecticut really didn't have a very active commission. So I worked all over the East Coast, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, everywhere from Maine to North Carolina. I worked and I got licensed. And a lot of the independent promoters did like me. USWF with Bob Bailey. They enjoyed the way I worked because, and I'm not, I don't want to brag, and I'm not bragging, but I think they liked the fact that the wrestlers seemed to like working with me because I realized early on no one ever bought a ticket to see a referee. No one was there to see me. My job is to make them look good. If I made them look good, then I'd probably stick around because they'd want to work with me. So I tried very hard to work with them. Not all in New York. Some of the older New York referees treated it like boxing. I was told in my first match, Johnny, I got disqualified. Johnny pushed me. I pushed him back. I disqualified him. I threatened him with a fine. Well, the Mike Thanasoulis, who was the old referee on the show, was really old school, said if they touch you, you disqualify them on the spot. And it was a rule book. You can't go outside the ring. Even though guys were going outside the ring, New York had a rule book about all things. You can't use chairs or tables. Well, they finally kind of threw the rule book out the window. And I think Vince and some of the other promoters started saying, I know, for example, at WWE, they would control who worked the Garden. If they didn't think I could handle it, I don't think they would have used me in the Garden. Because Dick Kroll and, if you remember, Dick Kroll and the fellow from Yonkers, he passed away recently. They normally got the main events at the Garden. His name skips my mind. He owned a bar.
So didn't it work that you would show up, I think, to WWE at the Garden? They'd pay you what they have to pay you, and sometimes they'd use you, and sometimes they'd just use their own guys, or is that how it worked?
Well, at the beginning, the first time, back in the 80s, 1982, 88, the first time I worked the Garden, I worked 4 matches. Dick Kroll worked 3, and Billy Caputo worked 3. They were not allowed to use their own guys. It was a state job. It was like boxing. Okay, you couldn't use your own people. Well, things started loosening up after a while, and they got their state guys. They got some of their own guys licensed with the state. So instead of working 4 matches at the Garden, maybe in the 90s, I'd work 2, and their guys would work 4. And then finally, they were paying me not to work at the end, basically. And what happened was they deregulated in 2000, and all the referees were no longer used. The state officials were not allowed to be used. And, I can understand Vince and Pat and all the guys with them. I can understand them not really like having us thrown on them. I could understand that. And that's why I always kept it very low key at the Garden. I never, and the smaller shows with the WWF with Arnie Skoll and these guys, and Rene Goulet was a great guy. They were much looser. We had a lot more fun. The Garden, I would always make sure, I just kept my mouth shut. I did my job and hoped that they would pretty much keep using me. But I could understand where they were coming from, and if they really wanted to, because it was changing, as you know. I mean, when I came in, everybody thought it was real. When I went out, nobody thought it was real. So there was no need to have state officials anymore, which is why I aligned myself with the independents, because I knew I wanted to keep working, and I would only be able to keep working if I was going to be aligned with the independents, because I could see the writing on the wall.
So, Dave, do you have any cool stories from the locker room at all? Anybody any interactions that you had with any of the guys that we would know? Junkyard Dog, Tito Santana, Brutus Beefcake, Greg Valentine, any of those guys?
Well, as far as interaction was concerned, on the independent, it was more so on the independent shows, because you were traveling with them, you were eating with them. Tanaka and I became friends. He used to travel with me on Tommy Jeanette shows. The Iron Sheik and I got to be very, very friendly. Sergeant Slaughter, because these were the guys that were working the independents at that time. They were the big names, Bam Bam Bigelow, of course, people like that. You'd eat Abdullah the Butcher. I would eat with him on many an occasion on these shows, and he'd have his big cigar after dinner and two chocolate sundaes, 2 chocolate fudge sundaes, and his big cigar. And a lot of times guys would ride with me because I had my car, and they didn't. As Tanaka said on the first show I worked with him, he said, "Do you mind if I ride with you? I hate riding in that smelly van with the wrestlers." So he would travel with me.
Is this Pat Tanaka?
No, Toro.
Oh, Toro. Okay.
Toro.
Yeah. Okay.
And then of course you had guys like Arthur the Samoan, Arthur, who I worked with, and then when he went back with the WWF with his Samoans, he was still very friendly with me. I knew Paul Heyman a little bit from town, and of course, Arnie, I was very, very close with Arnie and Johnny Rods. Those were the two I was probably the closest to. Arnie was just a wonderful man. And Johnny, without Johnny, I would have never made it. I wouldn't have known. I mean, I went into the first show. I had never stepped foot in a ring. First time I appeared in a ring was in front of 5,000 people at the Westchester County Center. I had no idea if it was fake or real. I had never stepped into a ring. I didn't know whether to go through the top and middle or the middle and bottom. Serious. I said, if they don't like working with me, are they going to hurt me? Can they throw me out of the ring? If they don't like the new guy? And so I got to the show, and Arnie Skolin, who I had breakfast with a lot, Arnie lived near me. And I used to go into this little breakfast place for breakfast where they sold cigars. So Arnie would be in there very often. We talk wrestling. So when I showed up for the first show, I never really used a gym bag. I used a little briefcase, a little suitcase. So Arnie goes, "You're going on vacation?" And I said, "No, I'm one of your referees." So I talked to the old referee, Mike Thanasoulis, and he gave me some good pointers. And then he said, "It's getting kind of late. You better go upstairs, talk to Rod in the heel locker room." So I said, "Okay." And I'm going up the stairs, and I'm going, "What the hell do I talk about? The weather? How's the family? Is wrestling real?" You know? And like I said, I'd never been in a ring. I'd never trained. But I said, "I can do this. I know I can do it." So I went up and talked to Rods, and he put me at ease. And he goes, "First match." I go, "How'd you know?" He goes, "I looked at the face." And he talked about our match, which made me feel very comfortable. Johnny, if it hadn't been for Johnny, I would have worked one show and never worked again. But Johnny really, really gave me in one evening a crash course in refereeing. And Johnny's whole thing was, and this is what I did throughout my career, Johnny goes, "You are the sheriff. You are in charge in the ring. You make people believe that you don't favor the face and you don't favor the heel. You take charge. You add legitimacy. You do what you have to do, and that's your role. And don't forget it." And that's what I did throughout my career. I really was an old school ref, and I never really changed, even in the 2000s when I was working in.
I'm going to plug the book again. If people are watching Ringman, you can get it on Amazon.com. This is Dave Winell, and he's a referee that's done all kinds of cool stuff. And you can hear more stories like that in the book. Ed, did you have another question for him? I feel like I was cutting you off there.
No, that's all right. Dave, have you ever, what's the biggest bump that you ever had to take? Like, did you ever take one without knowing you were going to take one?
Well, it was a couple. You never knew when you were working with the on these independent shows. It was a new wrestler, and you know the pull-in where the referee gets pulled in and the guy charges across the ring?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, this guy must have missed the class when how to charge a referee, because he came in full force and he bruised several of my ribs. And I fell down, and I went in the locker room and I said, "What the hell were you doing?" He goes, "Well, I got a little carried away." I said, "You're lucky I didn't get carried away, you jerk." I said, "What the hell? Would you miss class the day they taught you that?" That was one time.
Who was it? Name names.
I don't remember. And I was glad I never worked with him again. It was somebody on an independent show. Another time, I think it was Balls Mahoney, who used to wrestle as a some kind of a guy with like a Sheik type character. And he would come in the ring and he would blow lighter fluid against this stick, and it would shoot out. Well, I didn't know he was going to do it, and I turned around and he singed my eyebrows off. But the absolute worst injury I ever got was self-inflicted. When I first started out, I didn't realize I should get wrestling boots with a slick bottom to slide, because the rings were nothing like they are today. They were canvas tied, and they would get ripples in them by the third match. Well, I had some kind of sneakers on, and Kamala had splashed. I think, I can't remember who it was. He splashed somebody, some worker, and I went down and I ripped the groin muscle.
Ooh.
And I went, and they say that's worse than childbirth. I went down and I went, 1, Jesus H. Christ. 2, son of a B. 3, holy hell. Kamal looks up at me and he goes, "You know, ref, I've been in this business a long time. That is the weirdest count I have ever heard." And I said, "You're going to have to raise your own hand. I think I got to roll out of the ring. I just ripped the groin muscle and I'm dying." And that was like, that was pretty bad. And then one night, Samu fell on me. He was supposed to fall near me. I was going down. The Samoans were wrestling the Rockers, and I went down. I went 1, 2, and Samu got drop kicked, and he was supposed to fall near me, and I was going to take the bump, and he misjudged, and he fell square on my back.
Oh,
And that was another. So there were miscues over the end. One night I got hit by an ice cube, a real ice cube, thrown from the balcony, and my forehead was bleeding quite a bit.
Fans can be brutal.
Oh yeah,
now, Dave, how big a guy are you? How big are you?
I'm a lot bigger now than I was.
Well, how tall are you?
5. I don't know, 5'6", 5'8".
Were you shocked at how big they were when because the ring is a lot smaller in person, I would imagine, than on TV. But were you shocked at how big the wrestlers were compared to maybe when you saw them on television?
Well, they grew as I did. They grew over. I grew physically, but they grew over the years. I mean, when I first started out, some of the wrestlers, some of the bigger wrestlers were people like from Baron Miguel Cicluna, for example, was a bigger. Bill Miller. That you didn't have a lot of huge wrestlers back then.
I remember looking in your book, and you said you came up to face to King Curtis Iakea. Oh, wait a minute. I mean, face to knees.
Yeah.
I think you were younger though. You were a kid or something.
No, I was. That was the first wrestling show I ever attended.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think I was probably about 14 or 15 years.
Right. Yep.
Yeah,
but
but
you like backstage, you were kind of like running around backstage. You got back there somehow or something, but we'll leave that for the people to read, I think, in the book.
Well, Andre the Giant was certainly, oh my goodness, am I? Would you believe I still have a flip phone? Am I a dinosaur?
Nice.
Well, they're going back to records and flip phones, so I'll be right in. But Andre the Giant was a large. Andre the Giant, Big John Studd, obviously, was quite large. Andre the Giant. I think one of the stiffest people I worked with nails. I was in a ring the night he wrestled Jake Robertson. He
was stiff as nails, actually.
Good point. He broke Jake's nose.
Wow.
Did you ever ref any Andre the Giant matches?
I did. I did a couple of Andre's matches. I could tell a few stories from him. I mean, it wouldn't hurt. The first time I did an Andre match, I actually he was sitting on a table in a ref's locker room. So I would always go to guys before a match and say, "Is there anything special I should know about your match?" So I see Andre. So I go over and I'm very friendly. And Andre was in a lot of pain. It was late in his career. I heard he couldn't even, if he fell in a ring, he had to roll out to stand up. He was in a lot of pain. Back muscles were going on. And, he would be bothered by everybody because he would stand out in the crowd. So I went over to him very nicely and I said, "Andre, is there anything I should know special about your match?" And he looked up from reading the paper and he goes, "Yes, count to 3." And he went back reading the paper. And after that, I never asked him again. I just counted 3.
That's great.
He was very, very quiet at the time. I think he was in a lot of pain at that point in time. But
Eddie, I won't go in too much into detail on this because this is about Dave, but I did tell a story on here weeks ago where a fan jumped me backstage and bit me and scratched my back. And Dave actually kind of helped me out with that situation. A fan jumped on my back. I think, Dave, you were acting as commissioner, I think, though. Did you actually? No, I don't know.
I know what. No, I know what you're talking about. For a while with the State Athletic Commission, I actually was an inspector for a little period of time after I retired. And I remember that it was up. Jim Hacksaw Duggan was on the show. I believe. Yeah. I remember a fan ran out and started punching you and jumped over the barricade. And I went out. I went over, and the security went over, and we took him out front, and we sat him down. And I think he was from a home. I think he had some issues.
He got his nose broke or something in the process. Something happened. The kid was a little messed up.
He might have.
Yeah.
they asked me to. The security said, police said, "Do you think we should press charge?" I said, "Absolutely not."
Yeah.
I said, "Just don't let him back in the arena."
Yeah.
I thought, don't let him back in, but I said we don't want to press charges. He got kind of carried away, and I would say just maybe call the place, have him call somebody to pick him up. He was hot because he believed everything was real.
Yeah, and I had these scratches on my back that you ever seen that famous Bruce Lee picture where it just had like scratches down his chest and like it looked like that on my back. The kid jumped on me, put me kind of like in a chokehold and started scratching. The guy was out there, man.
I remember that. He was you had him convinced that what he was watching was real. You really did a job that night. Were you on the show at Cortland SUNY? A SUNY show where the two guys jumped in a ring and they were hot with the chairs.
Yeah, T.C. Reynolds was there. Yeah, that was another one where. Yeah, Todd Taylor.
Todd Taylor was in a ring.
He was a referee I went to high school with, and I remember him. He put somebody in a chokehold, and people ran out. It was crazy.
Well, I was watching. That's funny. I was watching that match with a police officer in the back of the.
Wow.
Well, and the police officer goes, "Is that part of the show?" And I'm going, So we ran in a ring also, but by that time, I think T.C. Reynolds had thrown one of them out of the ring.
Right.
And he took the other one and got him into the corner. And the police officer, myself, and Todd stood guard that no one else would come into the ring. I think they get thrown. I'm pretty sure they get thrown.
T.C. Reynolds used to tag team with Preston Steele. They were kind of like a Team USA. But that night, I remember T.C. Reynolds was Batman. He had a Batman gimmick on.
Oh boy, no, those were fun.
And so just a couple of kids just jumped in. High school kids jumped in the ring and started throwing at the at the wrestlers. They started trying to fight.
They had chairs.
They had
cheers in their hand. And they started hitting the guys for real.
Yeah.
And it was like
it was a big crowd too. Remember that was like 2,000 people or so. SUNY Delhi, wasn't that? I think it was
SUNY Delhi. That's
Delhi.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
They told me they thought I was going to have to come and be a witness at court, but they never went to court.
Yeah.
Fortunately.
Yeah.
That's funny. Dave, do you have any memorabilia?
Do I have it?
Posters, anything?
Well, I've got tons of posters.
Yeah.
When they made the big posters, I got one from every state I worked in.
Oh wow, that's great. I have a few. I'd like to see your stuff.
I got this one right here.
Oh, cool. Hacksaw versus the Iron Sheik. It doesn't get better than that right there. Oh, look at that, Dave. Big Slam Vader. Do you remember that guy? He was the fake Van Vader. Bob Bailey used him.
Yeah.
No, that isn't actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He was a fake Vader. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he used to use the Sheik that wasn't the Sheik either. Remember?
Yep.
He had a guy who wasn't the Sheik too.
Yep.
I didn't know that.
Bob was known for that. He had these fake wrestler guys that would come in, and Big Slam Vader looked just like Van Vader, but wasn't him.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Sheik looked just like the Sheik.
Yep. Fake Doinks.
Well, I've always wanted to have. I would have loved to have seen a battle royal among all the Doinks across the country. That's what I was looking forward to.
20 Doink over the top battle royal.
Ray Lacamelli, who was the last Doink.
Yeah.
Lacamelli.
He was good. Biker dude. Yeah, he was cool.
Yeah, I used to work the fair shows with him, and he would wrestle his friend Bigelow, and they're the ones that would change the first time I worked with him, I never liked clowns growing up. I always had this little thing. I didn't like people that painted their faces. So I'm boarding in the same room with him. We're in the same room. And I said, I'm just telling you one thing right now. You better not sleep with that goddamn clown makeup on. If I get up at 2 a.m. and see that, I'm going to freak out. He goes, no, I don't work. But he used to wipe his face on my new wrestling. Is that a new shirt, Dave? Yeah, and he'd wipe the grease paint. You son of a. He was a cool guy.
I met Doink later on in his career.
Which one?
That's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if it was even the real Doink.
There's a bunch.
He was him and Kamala at an independent show.
It could have been anyone, man.
It's like 2009.
What was it?
in
Where
Massachusetts.
was it?
Mass?
The only
Anywhere.
only person
Ashland.
that wasn't Doink was me. I think the only person that had never been Doink would probably be me. The original one was who was original?
Matt Bourne, right?
That part. Yeah.
Netball, and
But
then
if
it
you
was
were in
Steve
Mass,
Ferry.
if you were in Mass and it was an indie, it could have been Sweet Scott Ashton, I think, did it over there. A guy named that. Even TC Reynolds, the guy we were just talking about, he did it for a while. You could just go and buy a costume and you were Doink. There was a bunch of them. It was really bad.
That's incredible.
I'm sure. I didn't know you didn't know that. That's funny.
And some of them were horrible wrestlers. Some of them were.
Oh,
horrible.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I paid $20 to get my picture taken with somebody who probably
With a fake Doink. And
wasn't
then
even-
think about the people that have him autograph the action figure or whatever, you know.
I know.
It wasn't him.
That's
It was just some
terrible.
guy.
Yeah, Dave. So, do you have any of the I'm always interested in, which I can't, which I haven't been able to find, are the lineup cards.
Um,
Oh yeah, those were
I
great.
have. You mean the ones that they would hang in the locker room?
No, the ones that were in the
would be like-
programs.
Yeah,
right?
in the program.
They were
Oh yeah,
putting up
I
nice.
have a lot of those.
Oh, do you?
I kept all my programs from the Garden. I probably worked there 15
Really?
times. Kept all my programs, and I paid for the program. A lot of guys didn't. I always
Wow.
paid for them, and I kept a lot of. I've got a. We used to get lineup cards pinned in the locker room. It would have the lineup, the order of the matches, and they would put DD if I had the match, or BC if Billy Caputo had the match. And I have a lineup card from one of the first times the Sheik battled Slaughter, and they were really going at it in the locker room. And I don't know if it was. I don't think it was a work. I mean, I think they were really going at it. And there was blood all over the program, and I picked it up off the floor. So I got a
Nice.
program from the locker room. And the other thing I have for memorabilia, which I really love, Arnold Skolin got it. They hadn't produced them for a long time, but I saw one of them. He got me a WWF coat, warm-up. I used to wear it as a warm-up coat. It's got, it's got the sleeves that are cuffed like, and it says on the back WWF, and it says Monday Night Raw. Or something like that on it, Raw or something like that, and that's something I've seen them on sale online on eBay for quite a bit of money, and that's one of the things. I still have my wrestling boots. I've still got the referee shirts. I'll probably give them to the grandkids or whatever if they're interested in them.
What are some other big arenas that you've worked other than the Garden? Did you work Albany?
I've worked Albany a few times, but I worked the Nassau Coliseum.
Okay.
They kind of put the refs in different areas. I was down in the metro area. So I'd get the Coliseum 1 month and the Garden the next month, usually. And I got some really great matches out in the Coliseum that I don't remember all of them.
Glens Falls?
Glens Falls, no, I never worked. See, they had guys that would work up there.
Okay.
They had state officials that were like, I was lucky. I got Westchester, I got Long Island, I got Staten Island, I got
Broome County, Binghamton.
Well, only with Bob Bill because he requested me.
Yeah.
But I would with the WWF, I would get the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, Long Island.
Downstate stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I'd get all that stuff. So I had plenty of shows just in the area I was in. Plus, I would get the independents that were in that area. And some of the refs I don't think really wanted to work independents. I worked anything they threw at me. But basically, I didn't go to Albany too much. I did a lot in New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, Massachusetts, and Connecticut with the Indies.
Rhode Island?
Rhode Island. Yeah, Rhode Island.
I remember there. Yeah. So do you remember a ring announcer named Bill Dunn with WWF? Bill Dunn.
The name is familiar.
Yeah, for a little while, he was doing around 90, 93, 94, 95. It was he was ringing out, seen a bit. This is a little before Tony Schimmel. Tony Schimmel was just ringing the bell when he was the ring announcer, and he would wear a tuxedo with just like a button here, not like a tie. And that guy let me ring announce with a guest ring announcer spot. I don't know if you remember when they would do that. For a while, they'd let a fan jump the fence and come in and ring announce. And I'm on a couple old Saturday morning tapes. Saturday Superstars doing a couple.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that was my first time doing something in one of the big arenas. I got to go in the ring and
where was that at? Where was it?
That was at Albany. So it was called Knickerbocker Arena then. Now it's Times Union or Pepsi Arena. Yeah.
Yeah, I've worked there a few times. As a matter of fact, I worked there one night when we had that snowstorm, the blizzard of the century. And I had to drive home from Buffalo. I'm from Buffalo, from Albany, and I was living in Westchester at the time. But if I could, I'd like to tell you the funniest story I've ever heard about a ring announcer, and I was involved. I don't know if you read it or not in the book. But the guy in White Plains with the Battle Royal.
Tell that. Yeah.
There was a 12-man Battle Royal. Okay, and I was the only ref outside the ring. And I used to use local ring announcers in those days. So they used this guy from the local radio station, an older man. And he got in a ring and he said, this is a 12-man Battle Royal for $5,000. Goes 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I only count 11 men. And the guys are going, what? He goes, they probably didn't have 12. They probably had 11 guys. So he goes, how can this be a Battle Royal with only 11 men? I count 11. So one of them looked down. I forget which one. It might have been Johnson. He goes, ring the damn bell, ref. So I rang the bell. And he got on a microphone. He said, oh, we have 12. And he goes, where? They picked him up and dropped him outside the ring on his head. He said, we have 12. We have 12. You're the 12th. They picked him up by his feet. No, true story. And dropped him on the pads outside the ring. And of course, the guy was all shaken up. And I said, I'm sorry, you're eliminated. Back to the locker room.
I hope he got an extra $100 that night.
Yeah, I know he had a headache.
All right, Dave. Well, before we let you go, I want to any interactions with Vince McMahon?
Oh,
very, very little.
Really?
When I worked the Garden, which is mostly in the late '80s, early '90s, the first time I met him, I walked out. The first time I worked the show, I was out looking at the ring. I went out, empty Garden, and I was in awe because I knew I'd be working the same ring with Bruno had worked in it, Pedro, all these guys. So I walked back, and there's a man in a gray pinstripe suit with gray sneakers, and that's what Vince wore to all the Garden shows: gray pinstripe suit, gray sneakers. And he walked by me, and I walked by him, and he said, "Good evening, sir." And I said, "Good evening." I had seen him on TV as an announcer. I didn't even probably at the time know. I knew he was in charge. But I said, "Good evening. How are you, sir?" And he goes, "Fine, thank you." It was nice to see you. I said, "Nice to see you." And then he would go into a room by himself at a monitor and watch the show. Pat Patterson would run the show completely at the Garden. Vince would just sit in a room with a monitor, and he would watch what was going on. And then basically those. Other than that, I did see him at Freddie Blassie's wake, and I did sit behind him at Freddie Blassie's funeral, and he did say hello to me. But I basically worked with people like he didn't show up in those days. The WWF they'd go up the East Coast, they'd come up to the Garden, and then go to White Plains, and then they might do a couple gym shows up here, or gym shows in the Bronx, or so what I would do is I love those smaller shows because Arnie'd be in charge, or Rene Goulet, or the Chief, and there was less tension on the show. Nobody was uptight. But Vince never really showed up at those shows. But to show you how it changed, the last few shows I worked at the Garden, I was walking outside the locker room door, and he almost ran me over. He was running up and down the hall, getting ready to go into the ring as part of the show. So it shows you the change from 1988 to the year 2000. But I didn't have much. He was always very polite to me. He was always very courteous. And so I certainly couldn't knock him in the book because he was, and I'm sure if he didn't want to use me, he would have said, "I don't want that guy. Don't put that guy on any of his Garden shows." So again, I I really worked with Patterson and Goulet and people like that. Not so much.
Howard Finkel?
Wonderful man, wonderful guy. I liked him an awful lot. The first time I worked the Garden, I worked the last show with the old drop microphone. I had the last match with the old drop mic. Remember the old drop microphone?
Yeah.
Well, I did the last match. It was Junkyard Dog, and I put in I put in Black Bart in the book, and it's the only error I think I have in the book. Hopefully, I put Junkyard Dog versus Black Bart, and it was Junkyard Dog versus Ron Bass, both cowboys, and it was the last time they ever used a drop ceiling mic. But the first time I got in a ring at the Garden, the lights went off, the ring lights came on. Howard Finkel said, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," and 16,000 people erupted at the same time. I had goosebumps all over my body.
Wow.
And I don't know, I've been to shows since then, and I've never experienced the kind of reaction of those 16,000 people in the Garden. And all he said was, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen." And it was, so I worked quite a bit with Howard, and always a great guy to work with, and always a pleasure.
Nice.
You know what would have been a cool? You know what I'm thinking of? Did you ever get a check? Would you get a check from what was the company before it was WWE? Were they
Titan Sports? Is that what you're
No,
saying?
it was before Titan Sports. They were called something else.
Capital
Capital Wrestling Corporation. Yeah. The place I normally get checks was from the local promoters, smaller promoters. Right. And some of them I would run to the bank. Is it open Monday morning? Because I had some bounce on me. The WWF later on did start issuing checks and so forth, but sometimes
a check from Capital Wrestling signed by Vince McMahon would be a really cool artifact.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think he probably even signed them. I think they were probably signed by whoever was the person running the office. But it would have been nice. I don't have a whole lot of memorabilia. I guess at the time you don't think when you're
of course.
You know, I got pictures. And I didn't want to look like a fan or a mark, but the only two guys I really wanted to take a picture with, three actually. I took a picture with Bruno raising his hand in a ring.
Nice.
Which was the greatest moment I spent in a ring. Because he replaced somebody. He'd retired and he replaced somebody for the evening, and I got him against Cowboy Bob Orton. And when I was raising his hand, I had gone out in street clothes and asked this guy with a zoom lens. There were no cameras in those days on the phones. I said to the guy, I said, "If Bruno wins, will you take my picture?" He said, I got to have this picture. And he said, "Sure, I'll be happy to."
Wow.
So I got Bruno in the ring, and he's on the wrong side, and I'm raising his hand. I says, "Come with me." And we walked all the way around the other side. And he goes, are we on television? And I said, "No, but I'll explain in the locker room. You got to come with me." So he walked over the other side and raised his hand. And he goes, "Yeah, it must have been the longest hand raise he's ever had." I got in the locker room, and I said, I had it. Come on. So he got the biggest kick out of that. And the other picture I had somebody to take, and the guy never sent it to me. And if you listen to this, send me the picture. I did a match for USA Wrestling with Nick Bockwinkel and Rick Martel, and in Bockwinkel's corner was Buddy Rogers.
Oh, wow.
So I was arguing with Buddy Rogers. I had the match. Buddy and I were arguing in a ring. He was doing the heel, Bockwinkel. He was Bockwinkel's manager. And we're going back and forth and we're arguing. And I got in the locker room and I said, "Buddy, I don't want to look like a mark," but I said, "You know, you're an icon in the business. I got to have a picture of you." And the guy never sent it to me, but I did get his autograph.
You said it was USA Wrestling. Is that Frank Goodman?
No, that was USA. Remember USA Pro Wrestling? Crockett got together with they got the AWA, Georgia Wrestling, and they came up north to try to they put all their talent together. They pooled all their talent together to try to buff McMahon, who was going into their territories, and it was Crockett was one of the guys involved. The NWA was involved. The AWA was involved. So you had mix and max matches, but
86, maybe 87,
something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But that was
Goodman was 10 years later, so I'm way off there.
Yeah.
Well,
Cool.
David, thanks for coming on the show tonight. Where can we pick your book up?
Well, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, online, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Anybody just Googles Ringman Dave Winell, they'll all kind of pop up. And some of my other podcasts are on there too that I've done. and it's been great. I had lost touch with a lot of the wrestlers and people like Kenny. Even I had lost touch because you just lose touch once you're kind of out of the business. And I've had a great time retouching with getting back together with a lot of people. But the problem I'm running into is people. I was on Facebook only because I want to see my grandkids' pictures, and I had 5 people. Once I got the book out, I said, well, I got to start going on the wrestling websites and this and that.
Sure,
so now I got about 180 people that I communicate with. And of course, guys will come back and they'll say, hi, I'm John Smith. You did my first match on television. I really love working with you. I have no idea who the guy is. I have to go on Google and find out who he wrestled as. And one guy was a Kodiak Bear. I never knew his real name. You know, so I had to look up his name. I had to look up people's names because I had no idea who the heck they were. Because I only know him as.
You know who found me recently is Jeff Miller, the Metal Maniac. Remember him?
Oh yeah. Oh, do I remember Jeff? Yes.
I'll have to hook him up with you and have him invite to your page.
He threw a guy in the corner one night that I was standing in, and the guy hit me and must not be out. And Jeff goes, well, you got to get out of the corners I'm working in. I didn't know what the hell corner was going to throw the guy in, you know. I wasn't sure. And but I always liked working with Jeff. I tried to get along. I tried to get along with most of them.
Sure.
He was a good guy. He used to drive. He used to drive Jimmy Snuka.
Snuka, he was Snuka's driver.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on. That's great, and we'll push the book. Thank
you for having me. Thank you so much.
There's a couple of people that do reviews too, and I'll talk to you offline about this. But sometimes a book like that, and you get like a website or one of the more big. I don't want to call them dirt sheets. They don't like that anymore. But you know, one of the internet version of that. That cover wrestling, if they review your book, then it becomes like a commercial for your book. So I'll try to hook you up with a couple of those guys too, and see if we can get the ball rolling a little.
Well, I know Slam has it. I know Slam.
Well, they do. Slam did it. Okay, that's one.
Jamie, I know Jamie gave it to the gentleman up there, and he's supposed to be reviewing it.
Cool.
And,
yeah.
Again, I'm not a name, and it really I was a little nervous putting it out because I said to myself, I didn't expect to have the New York Times bestseller, but I felt that the stories were important to get out there. I felt we need a fan-friendly book. There's too many books that just trash people.
Yeah.
And throw people under the bus for no reason at all. There are a couple of guys I didn't particularly care for, and you know what? They're not in the book.
Yeah. So the books that I wrote, Eddie, do I throw people under the bus? Maybe a little, but I'm speaking for someone else when I do it. So
well, you've certainly got a real great list of books. You've done phenomenal as far as.
Thanks.
God, you've done such wonderful, great people. I can't wait to read the Sabu book.
I'll send you one.
I did a match with him in Hakushi.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah. And it showed up on a tape recently. Somebody put out a pirate did the best of Sabu, and the damn thing was on it. And they won a 20-minute match. And it was an afternoon show, and it was like 200 people.
Huh.
It was kind of sad.
Did you work for Mike Sparta? Do you remember him?
I never worked for Mike.
Okay, he did a lot with Sabu, and that's where I met Sabu. But
no, it might have been. Was it a Rob Russin show? Did he run New Jersey? Rob Russin?
Yeah, he did. Yep.
Might have been a Rob Russin show in New Jersey, but it was an afternoon show, and he had like 12 matches, and the other referee thought it was an evening show and never showed up.
Oh,
and Sabu was the last match against Takushi.
Yeah,
and
cool.
I just about made it out of the ring
with all the flying around.
Cool. Well, that would be appreciative, though. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Well, thanks, man.
All right. Well,
good. Thanks, guys. All right. So check out the book Ringman on Amazon.com.
All the best, Eddie. Ken, thank you.
Thanks.
All right.